What is your number one reason to speak up? What is your number one reason to express yourself? Have you ever thought about this at all? Well, I can tell you that when I'm working with my clients, there is one specific reason, which is they need perspective. They need to be taken seriously. And in order to be taken seriously, well, they need to learn to express themselves. Now, it starts all of this with actually they are expressing themselves, but they still are not heard, seen, and understood. They are still not taken seriously. And at some point, they might even think it must be me. And as a result, well, they don't see much of perspective anymore, any perspective at all. And well, that might lead to people saying, I'm going to opt out. And that's not what we want. But we also don't want people to be miserable. We want people to be happy. So, one of the things that I decided to do a long time ago is teach people to speak up and speak out. Now, for years, people thought I was like a travel blogger. And I can understand so because I love to travel. The moment that I decided to speak up and speak out, really at a conscious level, that was over a decade ago when I tripped on a brick and I couldn't stand on 2 feet anymore. And because no one believed me, I was sort of like, no, I want a different life. I want to be able to walk again. I want to be able to get back on my bike again. Why is no one listening to me? Why are people telling me this can't be done? I mean, the first surgery I got was like 9 months after I tripped on a brick. But because I knew what to do, being a therapist, people didn't believe me. It wasn't swollen all the time, it wasn't red all the time. But I knew that, I could only take a few steps and I could not only, well, I think even taking a few steps was already so painful. And well, let alone that I could walk more than a few steps. And basically, I would walk on a foot and a few toes. And still, people didn't believe me. I didn't get my crutches till, half a year later. And that was hard because I already went to the hospital. I talked to the surgeon. And, at some point, I was across a panel. 2 doctors, 1 physical therapist. And I was like, but this can't go on. What do you want me to do? I can't sit, especially not with something on my lap. I can't stand, I can't walk. You want to have me lie down all day? And of course, you have to be careful with what you're saying, because then I got a pneumonia and I actually had to lie down all day. So at some point, they put me in a cast. And it was prior to the pneumonia, because they said, we can't do the surgery. Can't do it, can't do it, can't do it. And of course, because of the pneumonia, I couldn't walk anyway. So I was able to take off the cast, and yes, it got rest. So the surgeon was like, hey, see, I'm right. And I said, well, I'll talk to you in a week or two. And yes, in a week or two, I was back. And that's when he actually decided to schedule surgery after saying 9 times at least, no, can't do, won't do. He was like, okay, I'm going to schedule it. The only thing was, he only scheduled half the part of the surgery. So it takes somewhere between 300 and 500 days to have your ligaments back to where they were again. And well, by the time we were past 500 days, there we were again. I still couldn't stand on 2 feet. It hurt when I was riding my bike. And I was about to give up. And I guess that's when my search started for a surgeon who could do more, because this one didn't want to do more. He had stitched up the ligament of the ankle on the inside. What he didn't take into consideration was there was bone which was still moving, tiny little bone, but the tendons were attached to it. So the good news was they didn't pop out through the ligament anymore. The bad news was they were still moving, and that was actually what was causing the pain. And I was like, someone needs to be able to do something. I mean, I knew since day one that there was bone which was on the loose because someone had been testing it, and oh, it hurt when they did. But then it was like, okay, what now? And that search, that lasted years and years and years. So we're talking about 2014, the summer of 2014. Surgery was May 2015. And I guess things changed when I had friends coming over from the US, and they were like, this still hasn't been fixed, really? And traveling with them, I noticed that, well, there was so much I couldn't do. It was such a hassle to go with them on tour. And I was like, this needs to change. And well, actually, I guess they agreed because, going backstage, going up 4 stairs, they thought it was hazardous. And it was painful, let's put it that way. But I was supported for the first time. There were people taking me seriously. And I guess that was the big change. I got taken seriously. In the meantime, there was one friend who was supporting me. My sister was also supporting me. She was the one who took me to the ER and got me crutches, which was in the first Christmas after everything had happened, half a year later. But that friend and I, we would take pictures, we would use markers, whatever it took to explain to people this is what's happening. Because, like I said, it wasn't swollen, it wasn't red most of the time, because I knew what to do in order to actually have it, there be some rest. And that was good. And well, because of my friends and me going on tour with them, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it one more chance. So I called the health insurance company and I said, I need help. People are not listening to me and I need help. I'm not taken seriously. There must be some surgeon somewhere who can do this surgery. They came up with a list of people I could go to, and if that wouldn't work, we would go abroad. Now all of a sudden, someone caught my eye. She had been trained by a surgeon who I actually had been speaking to a year before. And he had been on his high horse. How did you get my number? How did you get this appointment? This is not normal. I'm in Spain. Only people who pay a lot can get surgery from me. And well, basically, he said you need 2 surgeries, and one can't be done, and one has never been done. I'm not going to do it. But the other one, she's called Bella, she had a different opinion. I think that pretty quickly she already understood what was going on and what it is that I needed. And well, she wants a second opinion. That was again very, well, very disappointing. That's an understatement. I was enraged when I'd been talking to the one with the second opinion. The reason I was because they couldn't be there at the same time. So instead of consulting one another during one consult, I had a separate one, and she looked and she said, well, I can come up with multiple reasons why there are things wrong with your foot and your ankle, but we're not going to fix an unknown number of reasons. So no, I don't understand what's going on. And that was it. And I remember going back to the desk and saying, no, this is not good. I need to go back to Bella again. And that's what actually happened. I went back to Bella again. And well, she had done additional testing. She was actually appalled with how the first round of testing had been done in the previous hospital. And then she explained something to me. What she explained was something that I hadn't understood fully. So I knew I had a split bone in my foot. I actually have them in both my feet. Well, I no longer have them in my left foot, but I still have it in my right foot. And what I always thought was that extra bone was actually putting pressure on the tendons, because that's how it felt for me. And then she explained to me, no, the tendons are attached to that part of the bone. And I was like, oh. So she said, you wanting me to remove that extra bone because it's moving forwards and backwards, that's going to be really complicated, because then I need to remove all the tendons and reattach them to another piece of the bone. And I was like, no, we don't want that. And then she said, but we do have different option. And the different option is that I am going to go in, take all the debris out, clean it up, shave part of the bones off because it's broader than normal, and then put two screws through them and attach them to one another. And she said something else. I cannot promise you won't be in pain anymore. But the reason she was willing to do it was because I wasn't in pain 24/7. Remember what I said? I knew what I needed to do in order to rest. So it wasn't red, it wasn't swollen, and it wasn't painful. And that was the one thing that actually saved me. So the neural system, when we are in constant pain, it changes. Even when you don't have pain anymore, it's still programmed to be switched on to pain. And well, having dealt with pain most of my life, I knew that there were things I could do in order not to feel pain. And well, that was the exact reason why people didn't want to help me, because they didn't believe me. But for her, it was a good enough reason to say, okay, I'm going to do it. So cheers to Bella. Now, that year before I had surgery, which was the end of 2018, I decided to go to the US. I was there for 6 weeks. I was on my own with 2 backpacks, and I went from state to state. Actually, I've done a lot of traveling in 2018. And if it hadn't been for me speaking up, I wouldn't have been able to do anything at all. So my number one reason has to do with speaking up and expressing myself. And basically it is to be taken seriously, to get perspective again on things I could do. Because I can tell you, it wasn't easy to be traveling like this. But I did it. I used my 2 crutches, and I had learned earlier that year it's no success to take a suitcase with me, because that meant I needed people to be able to get me in the airport too, and also from the airport to the car. So remember that I talked about my friends touring. So during summertime, they came back again, and I went to Spain, and I rented a car. So that part worked. But what didn't work was when I wanted to get back into the airport again. So they had left me literally standing before the doors of the airport, and I couldn't get in. So I had to scream to get people's attention. And then, fortunately for me, there was a very nice guy. He actually had lived here in Holland, and he came up to me and he helped me to get my suitcase inside. Having learned from that part, I missed my flight back home. Lots of things that didn't work out. On the other hand, it was nice weather, and well, Barcelona is a good place to be. So by that time, I had decided I'm not going to travel as long as I'm using crutches, and crutches was the only way to be able to walk, because I still could only stand on one foot and a few toes. I actually climbed a mountain. Well, that sounds very, well, it was the desert, and there are sort of like mountains. And uh, it's kind of cool to be on top of a mountain with the scratches. And when you see pictures of me, chances are that you can see me with blue sky in the back and 2 crutches. And I cannot tell you how proud I felt to actually be there. So the crutches also helped me support myself. And that was one of the reasons why I actually could go up. So yes, I talked to a lot of people during that time, because I went to multiple states. And well, they wanted to know what had happened, why I was in a wheelchair. I think back in the days I was using color tape. I'm not entirely sure. I think in 2014 I used color tape. I'm not sure what I used in 2018. But I do know this. People were curious about my story. And what surprised them most of all was that I had a positive vibe. I like talking to people, and I still kept a smile. And again, what made a difference for me was my friends coming over early 2018, realizing that this couldn't go on. So that's why I went back on the hunt again for a different surgeon. That I had to wait for 4 months, I didn't care. I had an appointment. And I instantly had a good feeling when it came to Bella. Bella van Dalen, that's her name. And well, when I came back, certain things had changed. And Well, for my recovery, I needed to stay off my foot. And by the time I already had a permanent house guest, she actually had managed to come over and stay at our place. The goal was for a few days to get her screen fixed, but she never left. And her service dog, he knew that I knew what help she needed. So during the night, he would bark and he would come and get me when something was wrong with her. And well, when you wake me up when I'm sleeping and you do it often enough, then that's not good. That's something that I couldn't handle. Fast forward, I talked to my friend and I said, I don't know. I don't know if I should do this because I don't know I'm going to heal up. And then I was looking for a place where I could stay afterwards. And well, there was one thing I knew. I wanted to go to a concert from the Dead Daisies because John Corabi was their singer, and I'm not going to say I adore the guy, but he's a great musician. He really is. And in 2009, I saw him for the first time. I had little to no clue that I had all his music by then, well, almost all of his music, because of his friend Bruce Kulick, the guitar player who had been in Kiss, and I had been following Bruce. And he had been in a band with Bruce called Union, and prior to that, he had been in a band called Mötley Crüe, and I had been a fan for years of Mötley Crüe, but he was the odd one out, and he was never fully appreciated when he replaced Vince Neil. So I had it on my CD player, and I had no clue that he was singing. But then when I was at the concert, I was like, oh, I know those songs. I was singing along with most of them, if not all. And that was a weird realization. But more importantly, after the concert, Bruce actually took a picture of me and John. And well, I was looking so happy on that picture. Thank you, Bruce, for doing so. Well, I also met a friend. I think that was the first concert friend I met. She's called Sandra. And well, we went to multiple concerts together. And because of our love for music, and especially the combination of John Corabi, Bruce Kulick, and Eric Singer, who has been the drummer for Kiss for most of the time. So it started out with Peter Criss. Peter Criss got replaced by Eric Carr, who is my inspiration for playing drums, also a role model. And he died, sadly, and he got replaced by Eric Singer. So there were two more friends, which was cool. And in later years, there were even more. Yeah. It was the beginning of a new world of friendships, a new world related to authenticity, finding out who I was. And well, it was the beginning of a new journey. So from 2009 onwards, I already started to become me. And not everybody was so happy with the change within me. I was experimenting, at my work. I was like, okay, what is going to happen if I pierce my lip and I have a ring here? And well, the reactions were various and also funny. At some point, I'd become a therapist and I'd become a coach and a counselor. And well, I wasn't taken seriously at the job, and actually that was the story of my life. Whenever I would work somewhere, it would start out great. The first one I would talk to, we would have a great conversation. I would be able to do whatever I wanted to do, and I would feel at home. But then management would switch, and they would want things from me, sort of boxing me in, and that didn't work. Didn't work well with me. And I don't know how they knew, but from the get-go, they would always hook me up to clients who were at once out themselves. And yes, that worked really well. So during the time, I was working for a company which was focusing on things which had to do with the road and actually also with waterworks. And I remember looking up when I had my driver's license, looking up at those big signs, with the crosses and with the speed on them, because I've been driving a lot in traffic jams. So I would stand still on the road and then look at those, and I would be fascinated by those. Now, I was working for that company, and I was in charge of the contracts, which actually managed to get those signs across the road and actually help them function. That was cool because I got to go to suppliers and see how big those signs were. I got to learn about gray and green, gray being the road, the pavement, and green being the grass. And the more I learned about all those things, the less I was understood by my colleagues, because they were into, both of us, well, all of us were into the IT. And they were in charge of the IT, which would help the general IT, like networks and all that stuff, which would help function the organization. And well, I of course was in charge of things which had to do with the road. So all different ball game, different set of rules. I had to talk with people from traffic centers, and I loved doing so, by the way. So we were a good fit, but not me and my direct colleagues. So that didn't work out very well. But like I said, I started experimenting by the time I started working on my own. And of course, with my ankle not functioning anymore, it meant I had to change myself over and over and over again. And well, that's when that first reason of doing what I'm doing started to come in existence, which was speaking up, expressing myself. Now, to fast forward, when I was looking for a place where I could stay, do you remember I talked about John Corabi, about concerts? And I wanted to see the guy with the Dead Daisies. Of course, there were a ton of really good musicians in there, and I wanted to see them too. But I was probably going to end up in a different location than where they were playing. So I was like, oh, how's this going to work out? And then something happened. I could stay in the same town where they were playing, actually. And well, for that reason, knowing that I could stay for like 2 weeks at a care facility, they call it a care pension. So I was like, okay, I'll go do it. And well, on Monday, I had my surgery, if correct. And on Tuesday, I was there. I was there at the concert. Well, or Tuesday, I was transported. No, I think I actually went to the concert. Well, probably was Wednesday, actually. So straight after surgery, I went to the concert. I was in full cast. I was actually in a wheelchair. And it was raining outside, so I was covered in, what do you call it? Those trash bags, blue ones. So yeah, I do have pictures of those. I made sure I was early, so the first 50 who were early were able to get a private acoustic session with the band, including me. And then we could do a meet and greet, which we did. And well, there was also a documentary being recorded. And well, I ended up taking a lot of pictures because I was not allowed to keep my wheelchair, not if I wanted to sit where I wanted to sit. And well, I talked to the guys. There were lots of pictures, and I ended up with a heart on my hand. So Doug Aldrich, the guitar player, said to me, and someone who later became a friend too, Stella, well, I need you to tell me that I sucked in front of the camera. And I was like, what? Oh, so we did. You know, he likes to be a little bit goofy, I guess. And because we did, he drew a heart on my hand. And that's when I decided to go to the tattoo artist over there, who has done a lot of my tattoos in later years. And I had that heart done on the inside of my wrist. So, well, you cannot really see it. This is actually the signature afterwards, but under here, yes, it's upside down. This is actually a heart, and it looked like a keyhole. And he described it as an angel, the tattoo artist. You could see like the wings and the halo and the feet. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So a lot of things happened in 2018. I always say I traveled the world, which is true. Just to name a few countries: Germany, Spain, England, of course, the Netherlands too, and then, of course, the US, multiple states. So yeah, and I did so on my own. And I said, if I can do it, you can do it too. But later on, my message changed a little bit. And it changed to the importance of speaking up, speaking out, and sharing your story. And what I wanted to get across was one thing. If you want to be taken seriously, then you need to speak up with clarity. So it's about being understood and understanding the other one. And in order to be understood, you need to figure out what the other one isn't getting. And do you remember that I talked about that one friend? You know, I would be there like every week. And we would talk about it. We would talk about, okay, what do we need to do? And I still can see me sitting there on the couch. And we would be like, okay, what now? And those pictures in that story actually helped Bella convince that she could do it. Now, it took me years after to actually be able to get back on 2 feet. And well, ever since, it has been going 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So, well, it's 2025 right now, right? And the good news is I can get back on my bike again, which is a lot of freedom. I can stand on 2 feet again, so I can use a suitcase whenever I want to travel. I can actually stand and talk to people. I can walk, but here's the rub. I cannot walk for a long time. So it's still short distances and it's at snail speed. But you know, compared to what it's such an improvement. But because I had been not using my left leg for so long, there has been a disbalance, and that has had its effect on my entire body. So yeah, the speaking up continues because, well, I need to talk regularly to medical staff because sometimes there's like a hernia acting up. Fortunately, my physical therapist has taught me how to reverse it. And that sounds a bit weird if you're not specialized in hernias, but he is. And what he said is if you make your back arch hollow, so you lay down on the ground, face down, and then you go up, then actually it might reverse the hernia. And he was right about it. Absolutely. But I do have two vertebrae which are sort of worn down, at least a little bit. So they do act up every now and then. And well, that's also because I'm hypermobile. I've got something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS. And as a result, the ligaments throughout my body are of very poor quality. Now, when I talk to people nowadays, all of them are like, wow, that can be right. You know, I'm suffering from this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, welcome to my world. I'm not sure if I actually say so. I might have done so in the beginning, but I don't do that anymore. But I do tell people, yeah, we are at an age where things go downhill and we need to take care of ourselves. Now, do you remember that I talked about starting to work for myself? Well, if we go on, a lot of things changed during that time. Health insurance companies didn't want to pay for therapists anymore, well, at least not my kind of therapist. And, well, you know, it basically meant no income. And of course, I couldn't do what I had been doing before. So I sort of changed what I did. I started guiding my clients, but more on a more permanent basis, like a couple of hours a week. And the main reason why they came to me was because they were not taken seriously. And as a result, they didn't see any perspective and they wanted to opt out. One of them actually did eventually, which also had to do with her hormonal problem. So she couldn't help it, but every once in a while, doubts would set in big time. And after having tried to opt out many times, she finally did it. And it was during COVID. I can tell you that had a huge impact on me. I started binge watching Chicago Fire. There are paramedics there and firemen. And they talk to one another after incidents. And actually they do in real life too. So I've been to Chicago a number of times and I always go by the fire stations. And the last time I did, I actually talked to one of those people about, well, no, I talked to one of the firefighters and we talked about how they support one another. And well, that actually helped me because I realized I'm not responsible for what they do. And that's actually what I also saw and started to realize when I was watching Chicago Fire. And of course, Chicago Fire led to Chicago PD, which led me to new friends and actually going to Chicago. So getting back to the whole speaking up and speaking out and being taken seriously, one of the things that I learned was, especially the younger ones who were trying to finish school, when they were doing their internship, didn't work out very well. And they needed someone to explain to their schools or their employers what was going on and what they needed. And do you remember that I told you I always was the odd one out? Well, it helped because I did understand. I understood them. I knew what it was like not to be heard, seen, and understood. And in retrospect, this was not only by the medical staff, the medical community, but it actually started when I was a really young kid. I mean, 9 months old, I was in the hospital for a month, and I can tell you that had its impact on me. Coming from a home with lots of noises, 2 siblings, my mom playing the piano 3 hours a day, and then going to a very sterile, wide, silent hospital where they basically ignored you for a month, 9 months old. And then later going to kindergarten. And one of my first recollections is that I brought postcards from one of my great aunts, and they passed it around. I didn't get it, why they did it, but I can tell you that the result was that I didn't trust people anymore. So I stayed on my own mostly. Teachers were something that they were safe until they weren't anymore. But yes, it had changed me. Now I know that I'm one of those people who is a neurodivergent. So my brain works a little bit different compared to other people, which actually has its consequences when it comes to taking the exams and getting your diploma. So as long as I can talk to people, I'm good to go. But if I do have to do stuff written, that doesn't work out. I had to learn that. And back then I didn't know, but now I know it's because my mind works different from other people. And guess what? The clients I'm working with, they think differently too. Their brain works a little different, just like mine does. And I so totally get them. I totally understand them. And I also know what it's like not to be taken seriously, not to be hurt. And, being like about to give up. The one difference between most of them and me was that a long time ago, when I was a teenager, I already was like, okay, I'm so done. I got bullied a lot and I felt like an outsider. Fortunately for me, I did get some friends at high school. My mom was smart enough to say she needs to be in a different class compared to those from elementary school. Great decision. So yes, I got a fresh start, new friends. And we all were the odd ones out, all of us. So we found one another. Let's put it that way. And I'm still in touch with a number of them. So that's kind of cool. And, well, when I was a teenager, I actually spent a lot of time at one of my friends. Her parents, they were okay with who I was. They introduced me to a lot of new things, and I'll always be grateful for what they did. And well, there were times that I was like, I'm just going to drive in front of a car on my bike. So I ride my bike in front of a car, and then I was like, yeah, but what if I survive and I have all these injuries and my mobility is going to be affected because of it? And that was one reason why I actually didn't do it. What I did do, and I didn't know until someone pointed it out, was something which is called automutilation. So if you ever come across people who have all these nice, neat white lines, probably somewhere where it's covered on their upper arm or their legs, they do so to numb the pain. I would scratch myself and, there would be like white lines on my arms. until someone pointed out, do you know that you're actually scratching yourself? I wasn't aware. And there were other things that I would do if things didn't go my way. So I had been playing the piano as early as 3 years old. And when things didn't work out, I would smash my fist on the piano, big wooden thing, or I would bite my fist. And that was anger, it was frustration. And now I know it's a way to numb the pain, the mental pain. By causing yourself physical pain, you take away the mental pain. So when I see people and, well, I see the scars, I know what they're going through. And I'm not going to get upset with them and angry. So whereas other people would lash out at them and scream, I remember with one of my clients that she had this horrible conversation. And I saw her, and she had been scratching herself with her keys. And I took out some lotion and I put it on her arms. Like, okay, let's take care of your arms. And that was a totally different reaction than she had expected. She was taken seriously. And of course, she wasn't the only one. By me going to schools, employers, also talking to other people, they were taken seriously. And, well, they also got to understand why they were not taken seriously and what they had to do in order to be taken seriously. Now, of course, there are still people who say, well, this is how I see the world, so that must be the norm. Well, unfortunately, that's not true. That's one of the things that I learned, and that's why I say clarity is so important. The clarity to figure out what are people thinking and how can you get across what you are thinking, and how can you get across that you don't understand them and you do want them to, because you want to understand one another in order to have a good conversation. Now, going back to this week, so Friday Night Live, which I also call Saturday morning early nowadays, because depending on the time zone where you are, it's either Friday Night Live or it's Saturday morning early. And for some, it's actually Saturday evening already. Yeah, it's kind of funny how it works with the world. But yeah, I've been working on something. So if you have been on my Instagram account, Lady Lexi Speaks Up, you now know why it speaks up. Then you might have seen something called Done by One. The Done by One is actually that you get the most important things done by 1 o'clock, so in the afternoon. I've been doing so for 3.5 weeks now, and I actually kind of like it. A lot of things have changed ever since. And one of the things on my list was to get a course out there which is related to 7 ways to express yourself. And it actually started with me doing Friday Night Live. And I ended up with this beauty. I still love it. 7 ways to express yourself. So this is a handout that you can print. And I actually have been experimenting with it because I was like, okay, I love this, but what if you could take it with you in a different format? So this is postcard format. This is what it's like when it's totally dark. And whereas I have text which is readable when it's have a size of a page, it's no longer readable when it's postcard format. And well, actually, one of the things I did is I wanted it credit card size. So you can actually put it in your wallet. And on the back, there are the 7 ways to express yourself. but then the words, which is way better than this. So I've been doing a lot of stuff around the 7 ways to express yourself. I was like, it started with Christmas, during Christmas, that I want people to have fun. People who would be on their own. And well, for a number of people, Christmas actually isn't a fun time. And then I was like, okay, so what can you do to have fun? And then I actually came up with the 7 ways to express yourself. And well, one of them is through music, one of them is through writing, so the musical notes and the notebook, drawing, voicing yourself, designing as in being creative, dreaming, and visualizing. And from the handout, and of course the Christmas challenge, which was the second one, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it into a 7 ways to express yourself training. And then I was like, okay, so now people need to find me and they need to get access to me. So we are usually talking about freebies. I've stopped with handing out freebies. Actually, if you want this one, it's like €1, $1. So less than a cup of coffee. And why do I want people to pay for it? Because of their intention. When you pay for something, then you're more likely to actually take a look at it and do something with it. So course has been written. And then I was like, okay, but now I need people to get from the handout to the course. And they have a very nice word for it. The term is an email funnel. So what you do is you write emails to people. And well, for those who have been following me a longer time, they know that's one of the biggest struggles I've had. So learning to work with the software, which actually helps set up the website, but also the pages, the training courses and everything. Oh my God, that has been a hard one. You can do so many things once you get to understand it, but if you don't, well, that's a bit of a problem. So, done by one, most important things, I was like, okay, now I'm going to get the emails out there. And well, there are various ways. You can set up single emails, but you can also set up the funnel. And I had been experimenting with it already, but I had used it as part of the training, and I noticed that didn't really work for me. So I was like, okay, now I need to use it to get people from the handout to the actual course. And when I looked at the first email, it said, you need to share your number 1 reason for the training. Well, it's called 7 ways to express yourself with fun, because I believe fun is so important. And it was like, oh, okay. So I know what the number 1 reason is that I want people to speak up. It's being taken seriously. Well, I've talked to the entire hour about being taken seriously. And at some point, I decided to go live on Instagram and record it. And it just didn't feel good. Normally, I'm actually kind of good with going live on Instagram. But this time around, it was so rehearsed, it didn't feel right. And then I was like, well, you know what? I have my Friday night live, my Saturday morning early, Saturday night live for some others. You know what? I'm just going to talk about my number 1 reason for getting my message out there. And, well, that has to do with the importance of expressing yourself, the importance of speaking up, which, again, has to do with being taken seriously. So, the number 1 reason for speaking up, clarity, and, well, taken seriously is actually what you could say is the umbrella. taken seriously, being heard, seen, and understood. There you go. I know that the people I've been working with, especially the ones I've been guiding locally, that their life changed when they started working with me. I have been able to give them perspective again. Some are still in the middle of the process of finding out what's going on with them and how they can function in life. But there are also others who have found their rhythm. And, you can see that there's a change in their life. They're going to finish going to university, which is, I believe, is very cool. And well, I do a lot of online training too. And basically, the one message I will always talk about is about clarity and about the importance of speaking up, speaking out, sharing your story in order to get support. And then there's one other thing that I always share with them, and that's take one step at a time, because you don't change overnight. Well, things can impact you in such a way that you do change overnight, but habits are hard to change. And then we get to mindsets, belief systems, and I talk a lot about those too. And we talk about dreams and goals. And well, if you think a little bit differently, or you are a little bit differently, hence why I also use hashtag inclusion next to hashtag authenticity. Well, you've heard the story, so you get it, why I actually say so. And well, do you remember when I talked about automutilation? So, inflicting yourself with pain in order to numb the pain. Well, that also has to do with being taken seriously. And there are a number of people out there who, because there's a lack of self esteem, other people are taking advantage of them. So they're traumatized, they're abused. They end up with numbing themselves, alcohol, drugs, you name it. There are many ways you can actually numb yourself. And well, it's about rebuilding their self-esteem again, their self-worth, believing in themselves, changing their belief system, changing their mindsets. And that's one of the reasons that I also have a handout, which is transforming negative beliefs to positive beliefs. And yes, if you want to get the training, which is related to 7 ways to express yourself, it actually includes that handout, that script, where you learn how to transform negative beliefs into positive beliefs. And well, if you want it, the training is 77 euros. I thought that was fitting. 7 ways to express yourself. So 77 euros, $57. Like I said, it's about the same when it comes to value. And I will put in the description how you can actually get it. So if you're one of those people who need to learn to express yourself so you will be taken seriously, because we don't want you to opt out. We want you to get perspective again, to believe in your dreams and goals. And I do so by having you talk and communicate with your inner kid. Well, basically get back to what your dreams were when you were little, and also work on those false beliefs, those mindsets that work against you because you adopted them when you were a kid. And then from there on, also talk to your future self, your future champ, who actually has done it all and knows what to do. So we're going to talk about role models. And well, one thing I want to do is leave a legacy. And the legacy has to do with people understanding one another, being willing to communicate with one another. So I want people to learn how to express themselves with clarity. And I can do it on a personal level, one-on-one, or, and that's one of the things that I also am intending to do, which is going to be later this year, is I'm going to have these trips where people can have group coaching training. And especially if I were to have small business owners who do not understand why their employees don't do what they expect them to do, or, they want to get something across when it comes to importance, and vice versa. When you're an employee who is not being heard, because you've heard my story at the beginning of not being understood by employers and managers, I want to change that. And I want to create a ripple effect. And when people are working with multiple people, so they can talk to colleagues, they can talk to fellow business owners, and of course, everyone, usually has family and friends. So when they can talk to those friends and their children and the family members too, then we are creating a ripple effect of having people understand what's going on. And I can tell you, in the last couple of years, that's what I've been doing. I have been creating a ripple effect amongst my clients. And I can tell you that feels good. So if you're ready to learn how to express yourself 7 ways with fun, then go sign up. I'll make sure the link is there. For now, I'm going to ask you, if you want to get the message across, what would your number one thing be? What is it that you would like to get across? And if you're one of those people who need to learn to speak up and speak out, what is it that you would like to get across? How would things change when you are taken seriously? Let me know in the comments.